Yeah, well, I guess this is our next meeting of the Kubernetes SIG Drupal. We've been talking quite a bit about Kubernetes and its impact with Drupal. Drupal, I think, it is going to be impacted over the long term by Kubernetes. General statement of, I guess, purpose is for us to talk about the things that we're doing with Kubernetes, maybe identify some of the common problems that we're having, really find ways to collaborate on those problems, and then eventually bring those problems back to the different communities, in this case, Drupal. Some of the things that we've talked about before needing a lot of attention are things like Drupal's file system management, for example, maybe taking a deeper look at object storage and what that looks like as far as specific issues that need to be worked with Drupal queue, items like that. This is the first time that we've had, I'm going to assume mostly Australia audience, but I know that it has been previously talked about earlier to start alternating the schedules. And this is the first time that we are actively doing that. So I think as a first order of business, we'll just throw out there that not the next meeting, but the meeting after, if this is a good time slot for this particular group, we'll go ahead and schedule this as a meeting. And typically what we like to do is just start with quick introductions, maybe a quick hello and who's here, just to be considerate of everybody else, try and keep it to about 30 seconds to under a minute. My name's Kevin Bridges. I'm the CTO and founder at a company called Dread. We make a product called eDev and have a lot of interest in Kubernetes. I think it's a pretty cool thing to change the world with. And let's just go around the room. I guess Adam would be up next.
Yeah, sure. My name's Adam Bramley from Previous Next in Australia. I'm a pretty novice Kubernetes user, I guess. I started getting into it around Container Camp last year, and I'm working with Next Shoe and Next Maria on some pretty cool internal stuff. Oh, I'm a Drupal dev usually.
Great. Having a little bit of trouble hearing you, so I think I caught maybe every third word that you said there, but I got the general gist.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. We have two Nicks on the line, so let's start with Nick Santamaria, if I pronounce that correctly. You're muted, sir.
Yeah.
Wiggle the cable, man.
Hi, I'm Nick, and use with my audio inputs every day. That's Nick Santamaria. I work at Previous Next alongside Adam and the other Nick. Been using Kubernetes for a couple of years now. Drupal developer background going back a few years, but now basically exclusively working in cloud Kubernetes Go.
Awesome. And let's talk to the second Nick.
Yeah. So the running joke, I work at Previous Next as well. The running joke around Previous Next is high availability Nick, high availability operations. There we go. Toby muted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just about to say something. I think he got scared. Yeah. So I'm ops lead at Previous Next. Been there for 7 years. Started off as like a Drupal developer. Got addicted to like CI and pipelines, and then that just kind of snowballed into Docker and Kubernetes, and then switching from like PHP to Go. So yeah, that's it's kind of my big thing. Yeah.
Cool. Toby, I will unmute you. Sorry, you had a lot of background noise going on there, but let's give this a try. Can you introduce yourself? Maybe. All right, let's move on to Tom.
Yeah, hey guys, Tom Too Good here. Sorry, there goes Toby. Can you hear me? Yes. Hey, so it turns out my car, when it says microphone off, means microphone on. I'm the tech lead for the GovCMS project, the Department of Finance in Australia. Whilst we've got Amazy doing most of our Kubernetes, OpenShift, Dockery stuff, we're obviously really invested in the future of Docker, but most importantly Kubernetes. So I'm sort of here listening, watching, trying to keep notes and understand where it's all going.
Great. I think that's true of all of us. We're just trying to keep up. Kubernetes is pretty fast moving. Cool. And Tom, let's move on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good intro. So, Tom, I work for Amazy.io. My primary job is really working with Toby and managing a cluster for GovCMS, the program, which is the Australian government common web platform. So we run a bunch of sites on that and quite a large Kubernetes cluster. So, yeah, big scale things are always interested in working out optimizations and anything that can make improvements to how Drupal runs on Kubernetes.
Cool. And Ellie.
Hello, I'm Ellie. I work for Open Strategy Partners, supporting Kevin and DDev in their whatever they're up to. So I'm learning a lot about Kubernetes, and that's part of why I'm here. I'm also semi in charge of the minutes, and if anybody wants to hop in down there and just drop in your links and notes on what you're saying as it's happening, that's super helpful. Thank you.
Cool. And Simon, if you would, we're just doing quick introductions, maybe keep it under 60 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Simon Lindsay, long-time Drupaler, been working with OpenShift in particular, as opposed to Kubernetes, for 2+ years now. Before that, we did some Docker orchestration stuff ourselves and decided that was sort of horrible. Working at the University of Adelaide and working with Nick at Previous Next and some of the other guys as well on some of the things we're working on at the moment.
Excellent. Great. And let's just go ahead and jump in the agenda. Didn't unfortunately have enough time to prepare for this, so definitely appreciate the feedback that we've gotten so far. Right off on the agenda, we've got a couple of presentations. Last week, or last meeting, we focused a little bit on some of the work that Tess has been doing in the community. She did a presentation that is focused on getting Docker and Kubernetes to play well with Drupal. I think Jeff Geerling also had a presentation that we highlighted a little bit. I'm not sure which camp specifically they were speaking at, but if you want to take a few minutes and look at the, scroll down a little bit in the meeting notes documents, you'll actually see links for those. But yeah, I guess who would be the right person to talk a little bit about that first link that we have there, how to manage multiple Drupal sites with Lagoon?
I can. I think I posted that in the channel last night. I thought it was just you know, I actually only just watched it the other day because I've been on leave. But yeah, it's just an interesting approach to how we run things with massive sort of multiple Drupal sites, which are kind of like multi-site, but not. And just a really nice way to sort of manage that sort of scale. It means that we can actually just patch in sort of a one place approach in a base image and heavily focus on testing that before deploying out to, you know, hundreds of other sites and all through their own unique CI pipelines, so we can actually test and roll back each individual site. But yeah, there's just a YouTube video. You know, anyone has questions, just ask in the channel. But we're hopefully we've submitted a session in for Drupalcon Amsterdam. Yeah, along those lines as well. So.
I know there's been a lot of conversation about how to actually segment out core Drupal from possibly, you know, different file directories or composer-based directories so that it can be as efficient as possible utilizing Docker, but still dynamic enough to be able to be useful. And it seems like generally people are focusing on, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but just a strategy of keeping core as static as possible to be able to do the types of deployments that you're describing. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So, in this use case, I can talk about Gov CMS. So that's actually a Drupal profile. So we try to keep that as consistent as possible, because that's the commonality across all of our projects. So we're able to build out base images which contain that Drupal distribution, heavily test that. And even right now, there's actually a Drupal 8 release out tomorrow, and we've got beta images out there for the community to actually go and test their projects, and ensure that there's compatibility with the next release. And then basically we'll push the trigger and actually roll that out automatically across the cluster.
Cool. And have you? Yeah, I guess we're going to talk about security a little bit later on. So maybe I'll touch on that there. But it seems like this strategy is generally becoming predominant as far as being able to be a component of managing a larger security stance. And I'm curious if you've seen benefits in that area as well from this approach.
Yeah, I think, and I actually put that note in about Kubernetes security. So there is definitely benefits because you've got that single point where you actually can monitor and track, and you can have image scanning and things across that layer, and then only really need to worry about the customizations at the very end, when a site actually becomes a site, which is often adding some sort of theme customizations or things. So it just reduces that surface area where you have to actually test.
Cool. And it looks like we have another link in here for a CI/CD Kubernetes presentation that was at Kiev Camp. Can anybody speak to that? I haven't actually watched that video yet, just saw it come across, but it looks like it's on Layout Builder, how we build a platform with color theme management. And I'm assuming that it's using some pretty decent build pipelines inside of Kubernetes with GitLab and Helm. So unfortunately, we don't have anybody here to speak about it. Helm has been a previous topic of conversation for those that are interested. There's essentially a love-hate relationship with Helm. I think the general consensus right now is that Helm 3 makes grand promises and sounds amazing, and we hope that it fixes everything in the world that it claims to fix. But there's a little bit of skepticism around that as well. I know a lot of times, generally through the conversation, we've kind of picked up on the fact that people tend to overuse Helm and make it do a bit much. And as a result, it tends to be a little difficult to debug at times, specifically if you're talking about Helm 2. It can lead to a little bit of frustration trying to figure out what's going on in a more complex system. Does not fail gracefully the way that a lot of people would like to see it fail. So again, a lot of hope that Helm 3 does step up to the plate. And I'm curious if anybody has any other thoughts around Helm since I brought it up.
How do I get the feeling that this is like some inner turmoil that you have with Helm?
It's pretty common pain, I think, for anybody that's used it in Kubernetes deployment. It's package management, dependency management, always a difficult topic, and it's just amazing to me that we still have conversations about package management in this day and age.
Yeah, definitely. We've played with Helm 2. I wrote a couple of pull requests to do like post deploy steps and things like that, like to kind of, because I know they do have that hook in, but to like add streaming and all that kind of stuff to it. But yeah, there's this really weird gap between 2 and 3 where like I submitted a couple of pull requests. They said, we're not really going to add new features. Like Helm 3 is coming, and I kind of said, well, where can I contribute to Helm 3? And they said, no, it's being worked on actively behind the scenes. So yeah, it's been in like a really weird state for a long time. And like, my pull requests are coming back now, and they're saying, hey, like you can keep going now if you want and rebase. So Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity to play with Helm 3 yet. But yeah, they had me right up until they said Lua, and then I wasn't sure. So I don't know, like I get it, but then like it's interesting. So yeah, I want to give it a go. Like I love like ditching that Tiller piece. But then it sounds like it's going to compete a lot with like Customize. And is it Customize? Yeah, Customize. And those kinds of tools now on that arena. But yeah, I think we'll see how it shakes out. It's going to heat up again, I guess.
We've been customized quite a bit as well, and generally focusing on, you know, what we were using Helm for in the first place. So for us, it became a matter of really understanding where we just needed to work with templates and where we needed something a bit more complicated. One of the things that we've been trying to focus on as much as possible is trying to get into the operator controller pattern and being as Cube API as possible. So finding ways to extend the API and implement the API have really taken over our development effort.
Yeah, that's the same here. We've been I'll post a link, and we have a whole bunch of operators that we've been working on over the past 6 months, like kind of starting with like a Drupal operator, and then it kind of splits out into like SMTP database and all that kind of stuff. So I'd love to hear people's feedback on that, but I didn't want to pitch that stuff or anything. So well,
this is a great to be able to get the word out about those things. One of the things that I would like to see people talking about at Amsterdam is how to collaborate on those types of operators, because they are very common, and you know, we're very ambitious open source engineers, so it's very likely that we end up with a dozen or 24 implementations of the exact same thing, and you know, we stand to benefit a lot if we work together on those things. So take your time and share.
Absolutely. Well, I might put a little something together and come back. I'll post a link and then we'll come back to it. But I guess that's the other thing with Helm. It was like it was coming with an operator as well to kind of back it too. So I'm interested to see how that plays out on the spectrum of operators too. And like it's definitely got some brand. But to reiterate you and me to step back to let others speak, definitely sounds like it's trying to take on a lot of pieces, and I'm not sure which one's going to stick yet in Helm 3. So, Tom, you were going to jump in.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I hope there is some sort of convergence at some stage between the sort of the operator SDK approach as to Helm. So I feel like, you know, Helm sort of taking the deployment pain away, but not that full life cycle of management of an application. So, you know, if Helm is going to go anywhere and sort of increase its feature set, it's going to move into that space where it's sort of touching over into the operator space. So I don't know. I see that those two sort of converge at some point and provide each other sort of benefits. So that's what I hope to see.
I know there's an office around the corner where Diaz was originally, and I know that they are very, very adamant in fixing the problems surrounding Helm. They're very optimistic about the future, and like I said, it does sound like an amazing project, but I think, you know, the pain's pretty common that we can't really sit around and wait at this point. We don't have that luxury.
Yeah, well, I think I saw the Microsoft blog about Helm 3, and one of the subtitles said, Helm 3, it's built for production workloads, was the one thing, and which is pretty scary. So if you're using Helm 2 right now on production, you know, what are you meant to do? And this is right from the developers. So
yeah,
I guess it's still the Wild West out there in some cases.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's being more driven by the security model. You know, this has definitely become but I wonder if that's like that whole Tiller model, like if that's kind of why people maybe don't run it in prod, because it's definitely like still a hot play over people are using it in prod and it works. So yeah.
Would anybody in the group have any words of advice for people that might not know what Helm is or might be getting into Kubernetes and might be looking at using Helm? Maybe some words of advice, things to avoid, that type of stuff? I guess my first one would be to not overuse it. It does have a purpose. It's very good at general things, but if you find yourself running into a wall and trying to get it to do things that seem exceedingly difficult, it's likely that you have a square peg in a round hole, basically, and it's probably worth stepping back and evaluating what you're doing. You may not need a full-fledged package manager or equivalent when all you really need is a templating engine and a properly defined CRD, for example. So that might be my bit of advice.
Yeah, I think Customize is a great tool to look at. Just if you're basically wanting to start substitute values into a template. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend looking at Helm until version 3 comes out and we know precisely how well it's going to fare.
Yeah, and I would definitely try to avoid really complicated charts. I think that's the most common way that I've been burnt with Helm. Just charts that really sort of, and it's probably just doing too much. That's back to Kevin's point, is possibly it could have been done better elsewhere. I mean, at the end of the day, the output of Helm is a set of templated objects. There's no reason why you can't really just create those templated objects and manage it like that, with far greater control in some cases. So yeah, just pick your battles, basically.
Yeah, and it all comes down to that values.yaml file. I'm definitely guilty of it. You know, like miles and miles and miles of comments like to a value, and then space comment value default value, and it keeps going down. Yeah, so I guess that's a very good sign of like as your chart's getting more complex, that file's getting bigger because you're trying to add more edge cases into it. So maybe start with way more defaults just in the chart itself.
Cool. Next up on the agenda, we've got Drupalcon Amsterdam. I think that's going to be a pretty recurring topic of these talks until Amsterdam does occur. Lots of excitement around there. We were able to talk with Michael Schmidt previously in the last meetup about some of the efforts that we're trying to get into the mindset of some of the organizers with this DrupalCon, specifically that there is a lot of interest around getting Kubernetes and Drupal to work together well. I know that there were a couple of sessions submitted by Amazy. We've, on the DDev side, submitted quite a few sessions as well that are directly related to Kubernetes. It seems like there's a good opportunity to get together, even if it's a bit of an informal track, to have a bit of a talk track around the efforts that we're going through and the things that we're learning as a result of some of the work that we're doing. The goal being to remove pain, essentially. We want to, if we've learned something that can save somebody else trouble, then it makes sense to share that so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, essentially. So curious if anybody has any thoughts about Amsterdam or any insight into some of the planning that's been happening there, or we've got an open slot from the last conversation about organizing a Kubernetes social, which might just be a bit of a smaller group. I think the challenge around discussing Kubernetes in the way that we might want to at a place like Drupalcon Amsterdam is specifically that we're not really looking to have, hi, this is Kubernetes, this is what Docker is, this is, we want to go a little bit deeper than that with the conversation. So I'm just curious if anybody has any thoughts around that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm very encouraged by it. I mean, I hope the organisers do take it on board, and yeah, we're obviously pushing for that sort of. There's not going to be any summits at this particular DrupalCon, unfortunately. But the idea is that we're going to have the 3 sessions in one stream all in a row, which will be like a mini summit, I guess, if we can pull that off. Yeah, but it'd be great to have, people have come along and obviously submit ideas, and I'm sure not only those sessions, but there'll be great conversations outside of that as well, if we all get together. So looking forward to it.
Who from this group is able to go?
We will be there. I have a pretty significant team there, so some engineers that I don't think have ever met the Drupal community will be available.
Yeah, I'm pretty keen to go. Yeah, last Drupalcon Amsterdam was one of my favorites, so looking forward to this one.
Yeah, the last Amsterdam one was my one and only Drupalcon. So, except Drupalcon Sydney. Sorry, that counts too. But yeah, Amsterdam was that was so cool. Yeah, I won't be able to make this one, so I don't know. Yeah, it puts such a burden on to say like, can there be a remote aspect? But then, yeah, it's probably much better to do it all in person. So.
Well, and we have several events that we can practice at too. Bad Camp is coming up. There might be a little bit more informal flexibility to organize some talk tracks and maybe record them as well. The remote and distributed nature of working on Kubernetes is just something that, or open source in general, is something that I think that we can focus on. So to that end, if these meetings are helpful, please let me know. I hope that recording them is helpful and valuable to people. And if this format can improve in any way, shape, or form to maybe account for more people that might not be able to participate, that feedback's greatly welcomed as well.
Yeah, a good point there, Kevin. There's the Devops Summit at Bandcamp, which is a whole day dedicated to sort of DevOps, and I guess last year was quite Kubernetes focused, wasn't it? So yeah, there's always that as well.
Well, they're doing a different venue entirely this year for Bandcamp. So I think that the camp got a little dispersed because of the logistics of working with a campus. And as a result, I don't know that the conversations were as cohesive as they had been in previous years. So the sense that I'm getting from the people that I'm talking to are that it's going to be in the Hotel Shattuck, which is just down the street from where they typically have it at Berkeley. But it's going to be a smaller, more intimate venue. There's going to be 3 dedicated rooms, and forgive me if I'm slaughtering this or not getting it accurate. I'm not an organizer for Bandcamp. But I believe that they're going to have 3 larger rooms and then a kind of a central area for food and other hallway track kind of conversations. So I think there's a good opportunity to kind of, really get intimate with that conversation and have it be a little bit more effective this year. So again, we have some time to practice before we get to Amsterdam.
Yeah, and it's a little bit closer for Australian people to get to San Fran than Amsterdam.
Yep.
Likely.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to make it to Drupalcon Sydney, which happens to be my favorite Drupalcon that I've ever been to. That was one of the best experiences I've ever had, and very grateful for it. You have a very lovely area down there.
Just a general question about these SIG meetings. Is there any interest in having kind of lightning talks, maybe a 10-minute flash through with some prepared slides? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that the first couple of meetings have been generally focused on just trying to figure out why we're here and what we're talking about. And I would love to start getting some presentations together. Did you just volunteer for the first one? Is that what I heard?
Oh, yeah, sure. We'll come up with something.
Great. Okay. So we'll get you on the agenda for the next one that we have at this time slot, which will be in 4 weeks.
Yeah, fantastic. All right.
Great. Cool. Well, moving right along, Kubernetes Security. That's a fun one. Any recommendations is the general question out there. Crickets.
Non-root. Read-only file system. Actually, I'll get all not humble, but I was the one that took the pull request over the line and got it merged into Kubernetes for that read-only context flag. Docker exposed it, and then I just did the API pieces, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, so that one's kind of special to me. But yeah, read-only file system is a big deal, and I think that's a really big deal for for us, given like a lot of these exploits that come out. Like the first thing is like that htaccess file, or that like modifying files is kind of like the first thing that a bot will do. So yeah, so read-only and non-root are kind of my two big go-tos.
Proper SIG groups, just very tight security practices across the board, I think are critical. Being able to understand what the system looks like when it's not being attacked, and then also understand what the footprint looks like when somebody does manage to start to break out of a container or get file access. And then being able to be very diligent about that. I think it's really important to pay attention to security in ways that we haven't had to traditionally as a result of Kubernetes. There's a lot, I mean, everything from somebody uploading a Bitcoin miner written in PHP to just God only knows what. It's all over the place. But I think that some of the upcoming Lightning talks might be a bit of a good forum to focus on security specifically, and I've got a couple of people in mind that can help there.
Nice. Yeah, so I put the question in. It was mainly more about sort of tools around security. If anyone had any recommendations, we're doing a review at the moment on Twistlock, which looks pretty good. But obviously, other image scanning tools or things in the Docker ecosystem that could be useful if anyone has had any experience or just any ideas on things to research.
Aqua is the other one. I see there, like from what I've seen, like every time there's an OpenShift cluster, there's Aqua not too far behind deployed, but it looks like a really good product. So that's all good. Like that's probably the only other one from there.
Yeah, I think OpenShift 4 has Claire because they bought Core OS. So I believe OpenShift 4 has Claire built in. But, yeah.
Calico is a good one to look at as well. If you haven't had any exposure there, Calico is pretty decent. It almost, I don't know, kind of functions like a WAF or a firewall at a certain level, but it is written specifically for Kubernetes and does help out quite a bit. We've looked at Twistlock a little bit. We've looked at COPS a little bit to help. I can't strongly recommend using COPS for several reasons. And then there's a couple of services that we've looked at as well, where we're starting to find vendors that are stepping up to offer to install, a pod basically that will monitor the kernel essentially and give you a fair amount of insight and information into what's actually happening. And there's a lot of variance in those vendors. Specifically, I've had, speaking in US dollars, quotes everywhere from $30,000 a year to $250,000 plus a year to help secure a specific cluster. So I think that at some point, there's likely to be a more of a focus group on security, much like Drupal has the security team for the rest of the project. And it might be a good opportunity to start getting more of a cohesive answer about what we do from a security perspective and how we deal with it as a community, because it is a very difficult conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think a work in progress. There's a lot of things obviously in the pipeline, and a lot of things changing. So I think it's just going to be a constant thing to look out for.
Yep, most definitely. And it's one of the more complicated things right now, unfortunately.
By the same token, some of these levers that we have now weren't there in traditional hosting. Like when were you able to like just turn on read-only, you know, for your app, or talk about like what your app does and then contain it down into that, you know what I mean? By applying like, you know, all your like C groups rules and things like that to it. So like, yeah, it's like by one, like it's more complicated, but yeah, we're all starting to have these these really complicated discussions because there's so much more that we can do now to actually secure this stuff. So yeah, but by the same time, it's so much easier to like, yeah, hurt yourself as well and shoot yourself in the foot. So
yeah, but I guess with security, if your surface area is small, which you can do with containers now, it just makes things a lot easier. So, but I think that's the really good goal, is you got to try to keep these things as small as possible to make your job easier.
Right.
Many people running kind of untrusted workloads, you know, it's like third parties, teams that, you know, you don't have a direct connection to.
Yes, and it's a challenge. You know, once you start moving into the agency space, specifically Drupal agencies, you're going to see a broader and broader array of software that people would like to host. So everything from, you know, an agency that might have several thousand sites behind them, but only have update policies for half of their customers, for example. Being able to help navigate people onto more of a trusted workload, or put them in a position where they're easily able to manage updates and upgrades is definitely a challenge that we've come across.
One thing that like we don't use at this point because we basically have entirely trusted workloads, but like pod security policies. So having those set up, and you can enforce stuff like, you know, UIDs that the containers run as, file system, you know, must be read only or not. So those are just a really handy thing if you're running containers that you haven't vetted.
SysDig is the company that I was thinking of. They have some open source projects that are directly related to security and getting a lot of data out of the system. So highly encourage you, if you haven't had an opportunity, to take a look at them. They've been quite reasonably good for us.
Yeah, I was just going to say that from a GovCMS point of view, we're sort of security for us is paramount. The whole concept of trusted versus untrusted workloads, we have various levels of trusted workloads. So obviously, as Tom said, the ones that we're building and deploying on our own images, we know all about inside out and upside down. But as we start to build offerings, agencies can do more. How much are we comfortable with people doing inside our trusted before they become untrusted? So that's why tools like Twistlock or Aqua or any of those things, we've got to start looking so we get that real level of operational intelligence behind what's actually happening on our cluster. It's sort of, it keeps sort of growing and growing, even though the footprint is small. What could be done just gets bigger almost by the week because Kubernetes.
It's going to be an ongoing conversation for a good amount of time, I think. And unfortunately, I do believe that exploits will get more targeted and more severe as Kubernetes takes hold.
And I guess by design, classic hosting companies were restricted in because they would just, you know, what was installed on the server was what was installed with a container, and if you can extend that container, the world's your oyster, basically.
And then you're in a world of discomfort when you hit a scenario where you think that you're working with trusted code and you think that you know it inside and out, but in fact it's been compromised in some way, shape, or form, and ultimately you end up propagating some of the security issues because you're under the impression that there's a level of trust there that might not be warranted. So I'm curious to see how this conversation unfolds.
It's around evidence as well. You can know that you trust people, but how do you know what's the evidence? And for us, particularly having to go through sort of all the specific government security accreditations, it's having that reassurance that what you say really is. You can adapt that all the time, but
Well, signing things and validating hashes is usually a good start from my experience. Cool. Well, we have about 20 more minutes, so just to be respectful of everybody's time, does anybody else have anything that they'd like to add on security? Cool. So it sounds like 2 more items remain on the agenda. The first is a Prometheus scraper for Drupal and what that might look like. And then the second is just kind of an opportunity for anyone to share any challenges or celebrations that they've recently come across. We may not have an immediate answer here, but getting it out there might help us find it. So let's go ahead and dive into Prometheus. I'm not quite sure who raised that one.
I did. Yeah, I actually brought this up a couple of weeks ago. I think there wasn't too many around, but I was just interested to know if anyone was keen to sort of join forces and look at ways to build basically a Prometheus scraper for Drupal, laser module that's just pulling out metrics within Drupal. So what kind of metrics that are like node counts, that entity counts and things. I guess just having that plumbing in place means that we can just add different metrics, and module versions would be a good point, and things like that. So is there one already, Nick? Oh God,
There is.
Too slow.
Go, Adam.
Yeah, Kim and I worked on the Prometheus exporter module,
Nice.
which currently has module version as a pluggable module, so you can write your own custom metrics if you want, but the ones that ship with the module. I'm hoping you can hear me okay as well.
You can.
Yes, good.
The ones that ship with the module are module version, PHP version, queue size, and a couple of other ones, I think. Feel free to contribute any generic plugins, or you can write that as well.
Did I get the correct link there in the chat?
Yes, that's the one.
Perfect. Great.
Unfortunately, I got to run because we got a client meeting, but feel free to pick me about it if you want.
Yeah, nice one. We'll check it out and give it a test. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
saves a lot of time.
Cool.
Yeah. Like the big push for something like this was for like queues. Queues is a big is a really, really big deal. Especially when you're moving to a Kubernetes-based, hosting architecture, and then you're pushing stuff like SMTP off. Traditionally, a lot of people might just use the host, use the VM, use the SMTP service on the host, which isn't really super awesome. But when you're going into a container-based hosting infrastructure, then you need to start looking at those services. You probably need to be a bit more resilient and put your mail into queues and have cron jobs to process it. So having visibility into like how big those queues are and like how efficiently you're working through them, that was kind of the big push for something like this. So for us.
Nice. Yeah, I think for us, just this module versions would be super awesome to be able to report at scale. What sites are running and what versions and things like that would be awesome.
That would definitely be huge and save a lot of time for us as well. Just being able to help get a bit of a, back to security again, understand what's running on the platform. Cool. And then I guess the next item that we have up is just kind of, war stories, happy stories, however you want to say it. Just, anything that comes to mind that might have been a success for you, anything that you're having a particular challenge in, now's the opportunity to raise that and share it with the group. And I know ours right now, we're looking specifically at a lot of Firebase usage to handle authentication and authorization in different capacities across multiple products. So for us, paying attention to how to get Firebase to work well with a Kube native API has been quite the challenge. I'm not entirely sure that those two products were meant to work well together, but you know, we have gone through the process of understanding the bootstrap cycle of Kubernetes and how to get those bearer tokens working properly has been very interesting. So hopefully we'll have some good talks coming out of that pretty soon.
We had a good win over the weekend in the last 6 months. So we've just launched a rebuild of a government public service application serves 220 million requests per month. Now, the interesting thing about this was we had a Drupal 7 site running on our Kubernetes cluster, and during the Drupal 8 rebuild, the team decided to do incremental migrations. So take one feature from the Drupal 7 site, build it in Drupal 8, and then start routing traffic to that feature on the new version. So yeah, we achieved this by using like ingress rules. So our HA proxy, ingress controller, we configured to, but basically, yeah, be able to, rather than just host like straight up domain names to a specific deployment, to be able to do it at a path-based level too. So where all the default traffic would go to the Drupal 7 site, we could say if you go to /service centers, which is the path where people could look up a specific location, that would then be routed to the Drupal 8 site transparently. And so, yeah, we did that a couple times during the project. And then the final cutover was basically just removing the ingress from the Drupal 7 site. And traffic magically was going to the Drupal 8 site. So that was, yeah, a really good win. Allowed us to have the site in production for a very long time rather than having to do like a big kind of one-off big bang at the end. And also meant that we didn't have to rely on the client performing any DNS changes at the critical moment. It's just all coming in through our CDN, and we were able to control exactly when the traffic cut over. So yeah, that was a big win for us.
Nice. Anybody else? Alrighty then. Again, to be respectful of everybody's time, we'll go ahead and keep it on schedule. So thank you all very much for your participation, and definitely look forward to speaking with everybody in the near future and continuing this. I love the fact that we can alternate the times and get even more people involved. So nice to meet you, and looking forward to doing more with you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah.
So,
See you, everybody.
Bye.